Alright, so I was on the Twitters, the X, whatever you want to feel like you want to call it, the Musks, and came across an interesting post. Basically, he's talking about that, hey, that it was Jeff Hardy saying that if he would have had his stuff together, that he could have been big or bigger than John Cena, basically. And while at first glance, I feel like it's easy to be like, that John Cena, that Mister Dun Dun Dun. Like, what you mean? But after I was giving it some thought, read a couple comments because most people was like, no, Cena. Then I did start running into people that also was like, no, he might have a point. I started thinking, I was like, I think he does have a point. I think that is very true. I was like, now granted, Jeff Hardy been around quite a long time. He was in WWE. I was like, yeah, he was before John Cena. I was just trying to think. I was like, how much at that time? I'm not looking that up. But in saying that, I was like, it's one of them weird things where it's like, Jeff Hardy was a guy that was also picked like from McMahon, just as much as Cena was. But I think that especially for what that Cena became, that would have basically been able to be why I think that Jeff Hardy could have been bigger than Cena. So I was like, Jeff Hardy was always a darling by all the people, mainly because, especially at the time of wrestling, there wasn't that many people who were doing high flying, death defying stunts and stuff like that. Now you get them from all over the place of people who either are doing stuff very athletically or they're doing stuff that is on a dangerous level like that. So it's like you see Ricochet as he's able to do all these high flying stunts. I was like, you can see Darby Allin as he's doing these death defying stunts. And I was like, you even got bigger people doing some of these things where they're jumping off doing some of these crazy stuff now, to where I was like, where it's like same thing of like how like Kofi Kingston, like back in the day, it was like, oh snap, look at this guy or whatever. Now it's kind of like, oh, he just sort of just looks regular amongst a whole bunch of people. And that sort of tends to happen with sports. No matter what kind of sports you look at, basically whoever with the crazy athletic people at then that like wowed you, it's like they wouldn't necessarily look the same way now, just because there's so many people that now have emulated or enhanced or just gotten better at doing those same things. But Jeff Hardy, that was a darling, as far like him himself, he was in the tag team with Matt as well and Lita, that Team Extreme. I was like, so them doing the hardcore stuff, them doing the ladder matches, that was their thing. I was like, they already had the hearts of everybody else, but Jeff Hardy was always the more charismatic one. I will say in compare out of the two. I was like, maybe that because he seemed like he was always an underdog. Maybe it's because of the way he gets ragdolled around, and how he does. Like he wasn't. I was like, he wasn't as built as his brother is. So him taking some of these punishments and doing some of these things and throwing his body around looks a lot more different. And also, he was a lot more, I think, risk averse than Matt was. So I was like, so we always got him in more prominent spots, I think, for Intercontinental Championships and stuff like that. Like I still remember to this day his match with the Undertaker, where Undertaker put his title on the line, and Jeff Hardy was like basically one of them. I think he kicked him into, like, basically at the time it was Tommy Dreamer's involvement, in order to even really get this shot. And no matter what the Undertaker did, he just kept on getting up. I was like, there was times where he had Intercontinental Championships with Triple H and was able to persevere through that. And of course, his tag team accomplishments and stuff like that. His WrestleMania match where it was them, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian. That I think also just cemented it to basically a whole bunch of people or whatever. I was like, he was the guy that was from the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era or whatever, that you could always count on for doing something crazy. Him, no matter if he jumped off the Raw stage or whatever, down to a swanton bomb. I was like, he always was just throwing his body, and you always was just rooting for him to come out on top. And but the theme music was cool. He had the outfits and stuff like that, especially at these times or whatever. The fade paint, the color, and all this other stuff. I was like, he was that guy. And so the thing I was thinking of that, I was like, it's like, okay. And then you look at Cena. And Cena was cool when he had the spinner belt. He was doing the whole rapping gimmick with the Dr. Thugonomics, beating JBL for the championship. He had his moments. Then he started becoming basically a little bit of a joke of himself, where it's like him wearing the shorts that were pants, then becomes the jorts, because it's sort of funny. Him over here with the colors and doing the I like never giving up and being more of a company man, and Super Cena and all this other stuff that he sort of started becoming while I was like the top baby face. He did also start becoming like, oh my god, this guy or whatever. Like however you thought about Roman Reigns, like the thing is with Roman Reigns is like his stuff just sucked, but it was of that same ilk in a way. And it was just sort of just like, oh my god, Cena again, Cena won, Cena beats people, we know, all right. That I think that you could have basically had Jeff Hardy in a role of how you have CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. And the reason I say that is because I was like, Jeff Hardy, I was like, you could see like he was the guy that was being pushed up, like, oh, we're going to let this guy get a run. We're going to give this guy the championship. Because I was like, he did several times. He's had profile matchups and stuff like that, where it was with like Edge and it was with CM Punk and their stuff or whatever. That I was like, he could have fit that role. Because I was like, to me, he's like CM Punk, because he sort of is anti this or whatever. I was like, and in a way you can also see yourself in CM Punk. And I was like, but he's also an underdog in a lot of ways. I was like, sort of like CM Punk, but more like Bryan Danielson in some of the, even though we know that Jeff Hardy does have the backing of people behind that Bryan Danielson didn't have, and then to an extent that CM Punk didn't have it as well too. But I was like, the charismatic Enigma, that's his name because of how he was with the crowd. I was like, the way he is basically like dressed up, tatted up, almost like I CM Punk. He's rebellious in the way of how he just throws his body and being careless with it, but there's no fear with it. And I think you can also see yourself in him, like I said, with the other people, but in a different way. You sort of see yourself with Punk, you see yourself in him because it's like, yeah, screw the man. And that's how you sort of see him, Punk. I was like, Danielson, you sort of see yourself because you're just like, nobody ain't believing me either, and he made it to the top. Jeff Hardy, I feel like his role was basically the fact that he had, I was like, the real world problems did get too much, but you can sort of see yourself in that. He did have a never give up attitude, because I was like, he always was ready to and he was sort of like seen as an underdog. But I was like, I think that the real world problem, to an extent, did also help in that too. That it could have got done right by him, that I could have worked out. Where just like, hey, I was like, I got these problems. I've gone to rehab. I was like, that didn't work. I fell back short, but I'm still here and I'm still fighting and all this other stuff. And I was like, that works with a lot of people as well too. So I say, from his younger days to his older days, he always had something that basically got the people gravitated. And you also got to think too that I was like, this is before we got Bryan Danielson. This is before we got CM Punk. So while I use those two as examples, he was that before we even got here. I was like, before they even got here, that I was like, that's why he could have been on this level. I was like, he wouldn't have been the same talking and then with a pipe bomb and stuff like that CM Punk is or whatever. And I don't think that he would have been trying to be removed as much as Daniel Bryanson was of like being the top guy or nothing like that. But at those times, that's who he sort of was. To where it's like, yeah, during that extent of what John Cena was, where he was going from being cool to basically being like corny and goofy and stuff like that. That I'm like, yeah, Jeff Hardy could have been able to capitalize on that moment. You also got to think that there's a time too that wow, he was off and on, but CM Punk was also there, and I was like, while they did have their feud and stuff like that, that if he could have also stayed there as being present as well, that he could have also been able to be basically on that high level in WWE and stayed up there amongst the top players. That I was like, because he would have been able to be liked in a way that Cena could have been liked. I was like, to the way that CM Punk, I was like, had his ups and downs while basically still being the voice of the voiceless. And I was like, I think Daniel Bryan's stuff would have still happened, because I was like I said, I was like, Jeff Hardy still had the backing of the people in the back that Daniel didn't have. But it's sort of, I was like, but it's sort of a kind of a almost template where it was like, Jeff Hardy wasn't, I was like, to all of us, wasn't really supposed to be here, even though we wanted him to be there. So him like winning when he like won against Edge and Triple H, that was like, yo, he beat the big dogs of WWE. That's not supposed to happen or whatever at that time and stuff like that. So I was like, I do think that he could have been bigger than John Cena, just because I was like, he has the cool factor that Cena didn't have, even though Cena does have a resonate with all the kids and stuff like that as well too. He would have been looked at as a cool, edgy person. I was like, you would have had the old heads, you would have had like the people that's in their teens and stuff like that. I was like, you would have had a little bit of the kids, so that would have taken away a little bit from Cena. But I was like, Cena had that backing of Vince McMahon, so that might have been a hard thing. Anyway, what do y'all think? Do you think that Jeff Hardy could have been as big as Cena, bigger than Cena, or he would have still felt short, nobody beating Cena, because lol, with it. Anyway, y'all let me know what y'all think. Till then, peace. I'm out.